Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1285. 1285, Wednesday, December the 2nd, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since I did a video, and like all of you, I just continue to sit back and watch and observe everything, and it's quite surreal, continues to be, as we watch the mountains of evidence pile up, proving a clear, massive election fraud, massive coordinated election fraud across at least a half a dozen states, probably more. Yet we continue to see the narrative by the deep state, and there's a lot of people with the deep state, pretty much everyone except for Trump and all of us, and a handful of members of Congress. But actually, probably what we're seeing here is that it's actually some of these state legislators are showing more backbone and more courage than what we're seeing from the U.S. Congress. Republicans who are perfectly willing to throw Trump under the bus, even though it was his coattails they rode on to get to their re-elections, Lindsey Graham. So the evidence continues to pile up, but the narrative continues to stay the same. So clearly there is a deep state plot at play. As I said about a week ago, this is clearly just an extension of the original coup plot, which began the day that Trump was elected. It actually began before that, to stop him from being elected. When that failed, then they came out with the first coup, the Trump-Russia coup. Then when that failed, they went for the impeachment coup, for the phone call with the Ukrainian prime minister. And I think after that failed, I think that's probably when they decided, okay, when's the next opportunity we have? Well, probably the election. And I think this is really just it's one long coup attempt. It's never really stopped. You know, the coup attempts have never really stopped. This is just a continuation of the previous coup attempts. And Trump has certain constitutional powers that he could invoke. I doubt that he will, but there's things he could do to put a stop to these coups. But you know, exactly how you go about doing that, I don't know. And you would have to have the support of the military. You would have to have the support of some pretty high-level federal elected officials, appointed officials. I just don't know that he's got the people behind him that he would need to take the extraordinary measures that I think probably need to be taken to compete with the extraordinary measures being used against him. He's fighting with both hands behind his back, and that's the problem that we have here. But the evidence is piling up, and of course a lot of this is being revealed not because of anything that's been investigated by the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, nor is it from anything from the DOJ. In fact, we've learned that 2 of the witnesses that testified in the Pennsylvania hearings got visits from DOJ people who didn't seem to be very interested in what they knew about the election fraud, seemed to be much more interested in intimidating the actual people whistleblowing. So clearly we know that the DOJ and the FBI and all the rest are still on the same side with the coup plotters. The entire government, basically, the entire government is all part of the deep state, and it's all against Trump, 100%. But yeah, these hearings have been, I mean, the things that we're learning in these hearings, I mean, it's jaw-dropping. I'm sure some of you are watching. I'm watching this stuff, and I'm going, huh? We have... and we're talking specifically about the hearings. We had the ones in Pennsylvania. Then, of course, yesterday we had Michigan hearings. We've had hearings, the recent hearings in Nevada, Wisconsin. And just some of the things we're learning. We have this contract driver for the U.S. Postal Service who testified that he hauled somewhere in the range of about 288,000 ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. It's astonishing. if that is true. And he's testifying to this under oath. He signed, a sworn statement that he trucked 288,000, in his best estimation, 288,000 votes from New York to Pennsylvania. Ballots. For Biden, of course. We have this poll watcher in Michigan who says that he witnessed the 4 a.m. ballot dump. So that's how many people now have we got in 2 or 3 different states now signing sworn affidavits that they witnessed these 4 a.m. ballot dumps, which shows that it was all coordinated, planned. We have this other poll watcher in Michigan, which testifies that she saw ballots for Biden being rescanned 8 to 10 times. And that's not the first time that we've heard someone sign a sworn affidavit saying that that type of thing went on. And then, of course, up in Wisconsin, we have sworn testimony from a witness saying that there were over 100,000 ballots that were backdated. Backdated to election day, that came in a day, 2, 3 days afterwards, which were backdated to election day. These are all sworn affidavits. There are now over 1,000, and as I understand, several thousand sworn affidavits covering 3, 4, 5, 6 states of the same types of things going on. And yet you continue to hear what you don't hear. You don't hear any from them from the DOJ, from the FBI, from the DHS, who was really, the DHS was supposed to be in charge of making sure that there was no, funny business going on in this election. There was a special group put in place back in the spring to make sure none of this kind of thing would happen. But even, it's very disappointing. I mean, Rand Paul has come out and made a statement. He thinks there's a big problem. You've got Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, and you got a handful, but you don't have a unified message coming from the Republican Party in the federal Congress, from the House and Senate. I mean, it should be every Republican in the House and the Senate, with the exception of a handful of the Never Trumpers. But there should be a large scale statement made from the rank and file. Remember, these guys all got elected and reelected because of Trump, but they just seem to be frightened or don't know what to do. But they're not coming out and supporting the president as they should. They're leaving him out there to swing in the wind on his own, and it's sickening, quite frankly. Yesterday, of course, we had this Lieutenant Colonel Waldron, who's now testified in, I think this is the 2nd or 3rd state he's testified. Clearly, we've laid out his credentials. Many of you have seen his credentials. He's clearly an expert. You generally would see a guy like this and think, oh, he's definitely deep state, but he's not. He's someone who's worked a lot for the deep state, but he's clearly a patriot. And he's, of course, an IT expert. And he's talking about, in Arizona, in the hearings there, about the Dominion voting system being connected to the internet, which they deny, which he says is they're lying. Definitely connected to the internet. He says that he's also commented on this story we've been hearing about, that there was a special military group, the 305 military intelligence group, that went and got a server in Germany that apparently was being, was part of a CIA operation, that they apparently, and these guys are described as white hats. He describes them as white hats, says that they got this server, and he also says that their military, this crack military intelligence 305th unit, was watching in real time data transfers on election night as they were happening. This data being transferred from the U.S. To Germany. He says that, I believe he says that he now has copies of the data that was collected. So, I mean, it's just, and I could go on and on and on and on. I don't have time. I literally do not have time to sit here and go through bullet point one after another of just the statements that we've heard in public, not to mention the thousands that there simply isn't time to hear from every single person, every single affidavit. And it's every type of fraud you can imagine, and including types of fraud you could never imagine. It's breathtaking. Yet we continue to see nothing coming out of the FBI and DOJ except for Billy Bob, Attorney General Billy Bob, coming out making a statement. He said that he's seen no evidence of widespread election fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election. That's Billy Bob. Now, of course, this is the same Attorney General Billy Bob who, back when he was Attorney General for George Herbert Walker Bush, couldn't find any problem with the FBI sharpshooter Lon Hariuchi shooting Randy Weaver's wife right between the eyes as she stood in the doorway holding her baby, and then he shot Weaver's 10-year-old son in the back as he was running away. He didn't find any problem with that either. So I guess this shouldn't surprise us. He and Durham have been looking for some evidence of foul play with the Spygate coup now for almost 2 years. They seem to be having difficulty with that. Of course, Attorney General Barr saying that he, back in October, made Durham a special counsel. We're just now learning about this, that apparently back in October he made Durham a special counsel so that if something happened in the election and Trump lost, that it would protect the investigation. Right. You know, if Durham's been on this thing as long as he's been on it, and he still hasn't been able to figure it out, I don't think he's going to figure it out. No, what would have should have happened, and what would have actually mattered, would have been if they would have come out and made some sort of a statement letting us know what either there was problems or there wasn't. They've had enough time to at least find out about that. But that didn't happen. So it's really almost a moot point. And do you really think that the Spygate coup plotters are shaking in their shoes about the fact that Durham is going to be able to continue on after the election? I don't think so. I don't think they have anything to fear. Honestly, I'm not optimistic that anything's going to come out of Durham's investigation. I'd be shocked if something did happen. But it's a little late now, don't you think? We needed to know all this before the election. And they didn't have to actually be dropping charges on people at this time, but at the very minimum, the people of this country needed to know what had gone on for the past 3.5 years. It would have made a big difference. Not that Trump needed that, because he won the election anyway. It's just being stolen from him. And the DOJ and the FBI and the DHS, they don't seem to be very interested in any of the evidence that's coming out. They just seem to be ignoring it. Because if you ignore the evidence, then you can stand in front of a podium like Billy Bob and say that you haven't seen any widespread evidence. Well, you know, if you're not looking for the evidence, of course, you won't see it. And that's the problem with Billy Bob. Attorney General Billy Bob Billy Bob Barr, he is completely hapless. He's worthless at this point. I don't think in my lifetime that I can remember as an adult, I don't ever remember seeing this level of lawlessness at the top levels of government that I've seen under the so-called leadership of Attorney General Billy Bob. It's out of control. Corruption. He doesn't seem to notice. So who knows? Busy playing the bagpipes, playing a little golf, watching his investment portfolio, which has grown incredibly large over the decades as a key player for the deep state. So I don't have much confidence in Billy Bob. Well, the Trump campaign filed a fairly massive lawsuit in Wisconsin. We knew this was coming. They had to wait for this recount in order to be able to. They've had this lawsuit waiting to go for a week, but they had to wait for the recount to be finished, which wasn't a real recount. They had to finish waiting before they could actually file the lawsuit. So now they finished that count, and so they filed the lawsuit. And this lawsuit, of course, is to challenge thousands of ballots in Wisconsin believed to be illegal. Now, the system that they have in Wisconsin should allow them to uncover this, because the system they have there is that you can't just mail out ballots to people. They have to be requested. But we know that there were ballots shipped into Wisconsin as well, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. dumps, and all this other stuff. A lot of Biden dumps occurring on election night, and every one of them stinks. So, I still continue to believe, even though Giuliani and several other legal types have been saying that they believe that there will be a case that will be in front of the Supreme Court probably in about a week. Again, I'm not sure what that case is, and I'm not so sure if that's the way to go, because I just don't trust the Supreme Court. I just don't trust the system at all, the deep state at all. The only people I've seen who appear to be showing some backbone, and the people who actually could make a huge difference, are some of these state legislators. We're seeing some heroes and some patriots pop up here. Unlike in the federal Congress, where there's just a handful. But yes, we are seeing some patriots pop up in some of these key states. These are Republicans in the state legislatures. We are seeing some good people there. And they're the ones that really could have the most impact. And I still believe that that is the best way to go. The problem with going to the Supreme Court is if you get a bad decision at the Supreme Court, that could kill the whole thing because of the weight the Supreme Court carries. I'm very leery of the Supreme Court, because a ruling going against Trump could take these state legislatures that are, some of them, leaning towards not certifying the vote or not certifying those electors or replacing those electors. It could cause them to change their course of action. The court. It's the time. We don't have that much time to go through the courts. I don't trust the courts. It looks like to me, just from what I can see, and I don't have all the inside information on everything that's going on, but when I look at the two courses, the course of going through the courts and trying to get a case in front of the Supreme Court, or cases in front of the Supreme Court, and trying to get a positive ruling there, when I look at that versus going through the route of the state legislatures, I much prefer the route of the state legislatures at this point, because at least ways we see some of them standing up, and we know that if you get Pennsylvania, which is the most likely, you have some good state reps there that are basically saying we are not going to certify, or we are not going to send these electors for Biden. We either are not going to send electors at all and deprive Biden and Trump both of these electors' votes, or we're either going to give them to Trump, or we're going to deprive both candidates and just not report or send any electors to report to the Electoral College. And which case that would probably, along with maybe Pennsylvania, along with two other states, state legislatures decide to do that, where they decide we're just not going to seat any electors, and we're not going to send any electors to the Electoral College, or we think Trump won, so we're going to send Trump electors, which they can do either of those things. One of those would possibly give Trump the victory. The other would deprive both candidates of the 270 they need to win the Electoral College. That would throw it back in the Congress, and Trump would likely win if it came down to a party line vote. But I'm not even 100% sure that would work out. But this is, if I have to go two directions on this, I would go that direction through the. I would be working much closer with these state representatives, because they're much closer to the people, and they're the ones that are being pressured by Trump supporters in these states. These state legislators, Republicans, are feeling the heat from their constituents, and these guys are state level politicians who would like to get to the federal level, and standing up and doing the right thing could very well boost their political careers, or of course, we're going up against the deep states who could also, work out the other way as well. It's very courageous on their part to step forward. But I'm very nervous about the pathway going through the court, because if you get a Supreme Court ruling that is not favorable, it will make it very difficult for these state legislators to do the right thing, because then you have a court ruling going against them. Now, again, but then again, a Supreme Court ruling, if you got a good ruling, that could turn this whole thing out. But I just don't think that the Supreme Court wants to be the one to turn the election over. Now, and I'm not sure exactly what they will be looking at. If the Supreme Court would just come out with a simple ruling saying, okay, this thing's a mess, 5 or 6 states, we don't have time to go battle cases in each state, we're just going to say as a blanket rule of any state, any of the 50 states, that election day was November 3rd, any votes coming in after the polls closed have to be thrown out, ballots that you cannot match the signatures to a registered voter have to be thrown out. That would pretty much cover about 90%. And then you got the other stuff that's going on with the server company, the software companies. That stuff that Sidney Powell's working on, that stuff's going to take 2-3 years of litigation. She's already won discovery of these voting systems, so she's going to be able to get the systems. But she's going to be able to get data from those systems. But you're talking about a track there that's maybe going to take a year or two. Even if it's fast-tracked, it would be months. We don't have time to rescue Trump's presidency, his re-election, going the Sidney Powell route, unless things were to move at lightning speed. And that just doesn't happen. It's a civil case, and it's got many. There'll be challenges along the way. Every case she wins will be challenged. Every case she loses, she will challenge. There just isn't time. I hope she continues to pursue it for the benefit of future elections, 2018 or 2022 and 2024. So she should stay on it. But the Sidney Powell track is the long game. The short game is the game we have to worry about. And time is of the essence. We don't have much of it. And the two tracks there are either the state legislatures in Pennsylvania and 2 other states could say, this whole election was just so screwed up, we're not going to seat any electors at all, which would deprive both candidates of the 270, then it would go to the Congress. Or they could, Pennsylvania and 2 other states, state legislatures could say, yeah, we don't believe, based on all the evidence we've seen, we estimate that X amount of thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes were fraudulent. Therefore, we are not going to send the Biden electors. We're going to send Trump electors and cast our votes for Trump in the Electoral College, in which case Trump would win. Pennsylvania and 2 other states. Could be Georgia, could be Michigan, could be Wisconsin, could be Arizona, Nevada, who knows. But really, Pennsylvania and 2 other states would probably be what you would need. So that's the way it looks to me right now. I realize that there's still much more to come. It's just that, I feel like I feel like when I watch these hearings, or when I look at these witnesses, or I watch a press conference with Giuliani or something like that, I feel like there's like the momentum has shifted in our direction as the evidence continues to pile up. When I see some of the things coming out of the state legislatures, I feel like the momentum's going our way and things are going our way. But at the same time, because the narrative, being controlled by the deep state and their friends in the media, it's just so powerful. It's overwhelming. It sort of overwhelms the reality on the ground. It's like the lies are so much more prevalent than the truth, not because of their value, but because of their sheer volume. The volume of propaganda, lies, and cover-up, and silence, and all these things is overwhelming the truth and the evidence. The truth and evidence is there. It's just not being given the light of day, unless you're a Trump supporter who, like myself, comes home and gets on their computer and watches these hearings or recaps of these hearings and watches and you know, or reads stories, news stories, where you can actually read what some of these witnesses are saying. I mean, unless you're actually going looking for the evidence, digging for the evidence yourself, trying to find it, you won't find it. It's being suppressed. Billy Bob knows this. Attorney General Billy Bob knows this. You see nothing coming from the FBI, nothing from the DHS. So, you know, even like I say, I mean, you know, the Republican Party in the U.S. Congress, and I know you've got some never-Trumpers there, and of course the Senate, you've got, you know, Mitwitt, Romney, and you've got Murkowski and Collins, you have a handful of those. But, you know, there should be a united joint statement with Republicans in the House and Senate. It should be at least 90% of them should be out there publicly making a unified joint statement that this election was clearly fraudulent, and they need to be acting. I mean, Congress needs to be acting. They need to be acting even if they're still in the minority, even though they're not far from taking over the House of Representatives, by the way. They've now picked up 2 more seats this past week. I think they're up to 15 now. I think they're only like 4 seats from taking over the House. But massive fail on the part of the Democrats. But I mean, I'm just not seeing the united effort from the Republican Party. It's like they're willing, the Republican Party is willing to just stand by. I mean, governors, I mean, it's pathetic. The governors in Georgia, the governor there in Arizona wouldn't take Trump's call. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, you're watching a political party, and it clearly tells you that if you ever want to know for sure, I mean, proof that there is really not a Republican and Democratic Party, it's just one uniparty, there it is. I mean, there's the evidence that, if you ever want to see it, there it is. In a crucial moment like this, a seriously very crucial moment, which is crucial for the Republicans too, if we actually had a Republican and Democratic Party. But clearly, the gamesmanship that goes on clearly is not party related. It's one big uniparty, and you have a handful, just a small handful of honest players who can get in there and muckrake, but they really can't change anything. And you know, it just, if anything, all the things that we suspected and even many of us knew about the deep state is simply being proven as this all plays itself out. But again, it is maddening and frustrating, I'm sure for all of you as well, to sit back and look at all of this evidence and then to have so few Republicans come out and actually be willing to even defend themselves, their own party, their president, the guy whose coattails they rode on to get reelected. And I certainly hope these people are punished, but it's just sad. You get people like Lindsey Graham, as much of a son of a bitch as he is, we had to support him. Had to. And now he's there for 6 more years. Well, he'll screw us again for 6 more years, or 5.5. And then when he comes up for re-election again, he'll do the same thing. He'll pretend to be on our team for a few months. But as soon as he gets re-elected, boom, right back to old Lindsey Graham. He's out there yesterday saying that, yeah, Trump should attend the Biden inauguration. Massive voter fraud going on, and he knows it. Yet he's telling Trump he should attend the Biden inauguration? No. Biden should attend the Trump inauguration. Trump won the election. That's what I mean. These guys are spineless, man. They're slimy, spineless, self-interested. I mean, I just wish we could primary that son of a bitch. And, you know, that's the solution to a lot of this, is everybody should pay close attention to what their representatives, both at the federal and state level, are doing about this. And if they're not 100% supporting, you know, this Republican Party as it stands today, and the president, if they're not, I mean, and when defeating these guys at the local level is harder at the federal level, much harder. It's much easier to defeat these guys at the local level, so they never make it to the federal level. And that's really, I think, where you have to start. Because most of these guys start as state legislators, and then they become federal legislators. So it's hard to take them out once they get into the federal system because there's so much money and so much corruption. But at the state level, it's not as hard to flip, a bad guy for a good guy. So I think we all need to maybe focus more on state elections, which I never really did focus that much on them. But this has certainly caused me to rethink my position. And so next election, I am really going to pay very, very close attention to who my state representatives are and who my state representative is. And if he wasn't there fighting for Trump in 2020, I'm going to vote for his competitor or someone who was. And I hope there'll be a lot of people who will challenge, because remember, these people will be coming up for re-election in 2 years. It will be nice to get a big wave of good guys in there in 2022, and maybe they serve a term, and then maybe they run for the federal Congress in 2024. Some pro-Trump type guys who actually stood up for Trump. So I think this is shining a light on a much larger problem, and hopefully it will, at the very least, result in us getting a better plan to fight these people. And I think maybe fight them at the state level where they're easier to fight than at the federal level. I think that may be one of the keys here that we're starting to learn. But I still have some degree of confidence that if they continue to take their case to these state legislatures, and if people who live in these states continue to contact their state legislators and let them know what they think and bring the pressure, I think there still is a path forward, and I think that is the best path forward, is through the state legislators to either decertify their state altogether, not present any electors, or to flip their electors to Trump. I think that is the best course of action. The Supreme Court, I think, is slow, and I'm not so sure how they would rule, and I worry if they did rule against Trump that would suck the wind out of the sails of the state legislatures that may be willing to go to the mat on this thing. And I still think that's the best course of action. So that's just how it looks to me. The evidence is overwhelming, and again, it's maddening, frustrating, I'm sure for all of you as well, to see the overwhelming evidence, but yet to hear idiots like Attorney General Billy Bob say, well, we don't, and other Republicans say, well, we just haven't seen the evidence. I mean, it's maddening. We did have one other interesting news story that popped up yesterday with James O'Keefe. It looks like he's going to be dropping some more things here, but it looks like he dropped yesterday a phone call that was between a special correspondent for CNN and the CNN upper management, including, I think, Jeff Zucker, on that call, where this special correspondent is, talking about how not to give Trump a platform to contest the election results. So clearly and we know this, we didn't need this story to know this, it's just that O'Keefe has given us factual evidence, again, of what we already know is true. And so good work again by James O'Keefe. So all I can say at this point, my friends, is keep the faith. The fight continues. If you live in one of these states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, if you live in one of these states, get on the phone and contact your local representative, your local state senator, and let them know to stay the course. To either cast their electors, Trump electors, to the Electoral College, or none at all. That would be my advice. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Take care. See you. Bye.